He returned home earlier than anyone expected that day. The skies were dark despite it being daytime, and heavy raindrops hammered the streets like falling shards of glass. He had finished his meeting hours ahead of schedule and was eager to surprise his family, to walk through the front doors with gifts for the little ones he loved most in the world, his triplet daughters. But as he turned into the driveway, the sight before him froze his blood and shattered his heart in an instant. Beneath the great oak tree stood three tiny figures, drenched in the relentless downpour, their bright yellow dresses plastered to their trembling bodies, their little shoes buried in mud. They were his girls, his triplets, clinging to one another and crying in the cold rain. Not far away, his new wife, the woman he had trusted with the care of his children, was climbing into a sleek black car, her eyes avoiding his as though he were invisible. In that moment, he knew the world he had built was crumbling before his eyes. The rain poured down his face, mingling with the tears he could no longer contain, as he rushed to the tree where his daughters waited. They threw their tiny arms around his neck, clinging to him with desperate sobs, as though terrified he might vanish too. He could feel their small bodies shivering against him, their fragile hearts beating wildly in fear and confusion. And all he could think was, how could anyone do this to them? These girls were his entire life. He had promised their late mother that he would protect them, that he would give them a childhood filled with love and safety. Yet here they were, abandoned in a storm, left like forgotten toys in a cruel and careless world. The road that had led him to this moment was not simple. He had been widowed far too early, forced to raise three daughters on his own. Every day was a battle, a balance between endless work and tender care. He worked long hours to provide for them, came home to cook meals, clean the house, and rocked them to sleep when nightmares kept them awake. His life was full of exhaustion, but it was also filled with joy. His daughters' laughter gave him strength, and their milestones, first words, first steps, first drawings proudly held up for him, were the rewards that made every struggle worthwhile. Yet, as the years passed, the weight of loneliness grew heavier. He longed for someone to share the burden, someone who could bring not only love into his life but also a mother's warmth into his daughter's world. When she entered their lives, he believed he had found that person. She seemed perfect, warm smiles, gentle words, promises of devotion. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope again, to believe that happiness might still be possible. But behind the closed doors of their home, the truth revealed itself slowly and painfully. She complained about the responsibilities that came with children, about the endless noise, the messes, and the sacrifices she never thought she'd have to make. She longed for freedom, for parties and a glamorous life untainted by muddy shoes or late-night cries. And as time passed, her tenderness toward the girls faded until it became clear that her heart had never been theirs to begin with. He ignored the signs, telling himself she only needed time, that love would eventually grow where it was missing. But the truth came crashing down on that rainy day beneath the oak tree. He carried the girls inside, wrapping their cold little bodies in warm blankets, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep but knew he had to try. As the storm raged outside, he sat in silence beside them, listening to their soft breathing as they finally drifted into sleep. His mind was a battlefield of emotions, anger at the betrayal, sorrow for the pain his daughters had endured, regret for not seeing the truth sooner. Yet, beneath all of it, there was something stronger. A deep and unwavering determination burned inside him. No matter who walked away, no matter what struggles lay ahead, he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he would never, ever abandon his daughters. The days that followed were anything but easy. Whispers drifted from neighbors, pitying glances lingered too long from friends, and the endless, sharp-edged questions about how he could have trusted her seemed to cut him more deeply than he ever let on. Yet through it all, he shielded his daughters from the cruelty of the outside world. He wore a smile whenever they needed him to, even while his own heart was breaking in silence. The bills stacked up on the kitchen counter, exhaustion pressed heavy on his body once more, and yet, beneath the weight of despair, something inside him began to shift. There was a renewed strength, a fire that came not from anger but from devotion. He rose earlier than before, prepared warm breakfasts before school, and walked them hand in hand down the sidewalk each morning, whispering into their ears how much they meant to him. Each day, he reminded them of their worth, of his love, of their unshakable place in his life. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, their tears softened into giggles, their fear dissolved, and their eyes began to shine again with the sparkle of trust. Weeks later, as the long stretch of gray skies finally gave way to sunlight, he took them to the park. The grass was still damp from the recent rains, but the world seemed brighter, cleaner, renewed. His daughters, dressed once more in their beloved yellow dresses, ran across the open field like beams of golden light, their laughter carrying through the air like music. He sat quietly on a weathered bench, watching them play, feeling a sense of peace he had not known in months. In that moment, a realization swept over him with undeniable clarity. Despite the sting of betrayal and the loneliness that had followed, life had given him something far greater than he had ever deserved: 3 precious reasons to keep moving forward. His wife had walked away, but his daughters had stayed. They were not just his children, they were his companions, his anchor, his forever family. It was on one of those afternoons at the park that something unexpected happened. An older woman approached him, her eyes filled with quiet compassion, the kind of gaze that seemed to carry understanding born of experience. She had been watching him with the girls, and instead of pity, there was respect in her expression. She struck up a simple conversation, but over time, those conversations grew into friendship. She never tried to step into a role she did not belong to. She wasn't a replacement, not someone trying to erase what had been lost, but rather a gentle soul who offered warmth without expectation. Through her, he came to understand a powerful truth, that healing was never about replacing what was gone. It was about cherishing what remained and allowing space for kindness to seep back into broken places. The triplets flourished in the years that followed. They became stronger, braver, and filled with joy. They did not learn resilience from words or lectures but from watching their father live it every single day. They saw a man who had been broken but refused to remain that way, who chose love instead of bitterness, who fought for their happiness even when it demanded everything he had left to give. His example became their foundation, teaching them not just how to endure but how to rise above pain with dignity and hope. And years later, when those little girls looked back on the stormy day they had been abandoned under the oak tree, they did not remember it as the day their lives ended, they remembered it as the day their father's love became unshakable, as the moment when the bond between them was sealed forever in the rain. Perhaps that is the most powerful truth of all, that in the moments when the world abandons us, when the people we trust most leave us standing alone in the storm, love can still carry us through. Not the shallow love of convenience, but the fierce, selfless love that refuses to let go, the kind of love that holds a family together no matter how violently the storm rages outside. And so, beneath the bright daylight after the storm, he stood stronger than ever, his daughter's hands safely in his, the sun breaking at last through the darkened clouds. What had begun as tragedy had become a testimony, a reminder that even in our darkest hours, the light of kindness and love can guide us home. The memory of that man standing in the rain with his triplets would remain etched not only in his heart but in the hearts of anyone who ever heard their story. Life had stripped him bare in one cruel moment, taking from him the illusion of security, the promise of partnership, the dream of a simple family. But in its place, it had given him clarity, an unshakable bond with 3 fragile hearts that still trusted him, still needed him, and still loved him without condition. The mansion behind him, the wealth he had worked so hard for, even the bitter sting of betrayal, all of it faded into the background. What shone most brightly, what survived the storm, was the love between a father and his daughters. This story is a reminder that sometimes the greatest tragedies reveal the deepest treasures. No storm lasts forever, and no betrayal is powerful enough to break the bond of true love. What carries us forward are the choices we make in our darkest hour. He chose love. He chose his children. And in that choice, he discovered not only the path to healing and hope but the very essence of what it means to be a father.